Canada News with your host Divya. Now let's take a look on the headlines. Ottawa police issue 70 speeding tickets and more during long weekend Project Noisemaker crackdown. Local activist says dismantling racism in Calgary is a multi-step process. Provinces shift vaccination efforts to teen and younger adults as the rollout advances. Now news in detail. The long weekend kept cops busy as they continue to crack down on drivers for Project Noisemakers. Police were out in full force all over the city where they issued 125 provisional offence notices Friday and Saturday, and the long weekend isn't even over yet. In total, 70 speeding tickets were given out, 44 on Saturday and 26 on Sunday, 6 for an improper muffler, 6 for driving while on a cell phone, 2 for unnecessary noise, 1 for a child without a seat belt, and 1 notice to a driver with a blood alcohol level above 0 to 1. Just to name a few, officers also charged 3 suspended drivers and 1 driver for driving with an improper license. Project Noisemaker is a traffic safety initiative by the Ottawa Police Services to crack down on speeding, stunt driving and excessive noise on the city streets. A year after the murder of George Floyd saw thousands in Calgary hit the streets to demand police accountability, one activist took her fight from the streets to a seat on the Calgary Police Board Anti-Racism Committee. They associated that the reason we are so angry and the sole reason was because of the killing of George Floyd. George Floyd was the thing that broke the bucket's bottom. In response to the racial awakening, the Alberta government formally banned carding and regulated street checks. Calgary Police Chief Mark Newfield admitted that there was a systematic racism in the policing and made eliminating it a key priority. A day after Canada officially reported partially immunizing 50% of the residents against COVID-19, more provinces stepped up effort to add younger age groups to the vaccinated ranks. Ontario became the latest province to open vaccine appointments to kids 12 and over through the province's booking system. Those wanting to book can do so through the provisional online portal or call center, as well as through pharmacists offering the Pfizer-BioNTech shot. The province said while some youth had previously been able to obtain a vaccine through pop-up clients or initiatives spearheaded by the regional public health units, Sunday's news made access more equitable across the province. In Quebec, there was a long lineups outside a walk-in vaccine centers in Montreal that opened its doors to the 12 to 17 age groups over the weekend. The province will formally up its booking system to Youth 12. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, a Canadian bride and her American husband had no choice but to shelve their original wedding plans instead. They were married in a quaint ceremony straddling the border, surrounded by the family on either side and under the watchful eyes of border guards. Ovenia Finn and David Hacht were supposed to have their big day in their hometown of Ottawa last year in the presence of hundreds of loved ones from both countries. But after 2 months of closures and the health crisis surging, the pair of who met in New York decided they needed to find another option so that their parents and siblings could be with them for the wedding. The Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, addressed the European Union Global Health Summit and discussed the G20 and the COVID-19 epidemic. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has called on the United States to identify obstacles to the distribution of corona vaccine and to continue working with the World Trade Organization.
It is so good to see so many other friends gathered here as well from around the world. Because for people around the globe, it's been an incredibly difficult year. But even if we still have a lot of work to do to fight this pandemic, there is reason for hope. Just take the unprecedented scientific achievements we've seen in the last year, or the remarkable international cooperation. This pandemic has been a powerful reminder of just how interconnected we all are. Collaboration is the only way to overcome the challenges people face in every part of the world. That's why it's vital that we continue to come together, including through multilateral institutions like the G20, on strengthening respect for international law, reaffirming our collective commitment to human rights, and standing up for people who face persecution and suffering abroad. Our collective success depends on finding a better path to shared peace and prosperity for everyone. Many countries are still facing devastating waves of this pandemic. Canada has always been and remains a strong advocate for equitable access to vaccines and treatment around the world. We must do everything we can to make sure that everyone, including the most vulnerable, has access to safe, effective doses. We will continue to work actively with our partners, including at the WTO, to identify and reduce barriers to vaccine access. Initiatives like the ACT Accelerator and COVAX are also key to making sure no one is left behind. That's why Canada has contributed $1.3 billion to the ACT Accelerator. Canada's pleased to be among the top donors and is one of the few to have already met our proposed burden share. Since February 2020, we've mobilized more than $2.5 billion in international assistance in response to the pandemic. We've also provided funding for humanitarian assistance and sent essential supplies to India as they battle a devastating wave of this virus. On doit poursuivre cette lutte ensemble. Et le Canada va continuer d'être là avec du soutien à l'international jusqu'à ce que tout le monde ait réussi à traverser cette crise. COVID-19 has laid bare gaps that exist in the way we tackle health emergencies as a world. We must keep improving our global health public emergency architecture for now and for future generations. Based on the recommendations of the IPPPR and other reviews, Canada is committed to working with all WHO member states to strengthen our health systems. We need to learn from this pandemic. This means working toward greater coordination at all levels, investing in preparedness and strengthening surveillance and warning systems. And it also means ensuring that we have the arrangements and funding in place to rapidly scale up public health responses.
The third wave of the COVID-19 is challenging countries around the world. In the meantime, the government of Canada is doing everything it can be to support its friends and partners in these endeavors as we closely monitor the condition of our hospitals and intensive care units. We can be more confident in our ability to do more our friends in India. This information was given by Canadian politician Nina Tangri. According to the Nina Tangri, our government is donating another 2,000 E700 transport ventilators to India, manufactured by O2 Medical Technology in Brampton to help meet the country's ever-urgent medical needs. This assistance is in addition to the previous donation of 3,000 ventilators by our government, which is due to arrive in India this week. Our government is also assisting in the transportation of other important medical devices donated by the private sector and community organizations. These ventilators and adequate medical supply will make a difference in the support of the people of India. COVID-19 outbreak has been announced by the Toronto-based Hospital for Sick Children. The outbreak is said to have taken place in the inpatient unit, which specializes in pediatric medicine and respirology. The hospital says 2 patients admitted to the unit on May 16 tested positive for COVID-19. The hospital, in collaboration with Toronto Public Health, said in a statement that it had decided to announce an outbreak on Thursday, working closely with TPH. Anyone who has been exposed or suspected of being in contact with a COVID-19 patient has been notified. The hospital said the risk of COVID-19 to patient, families and staff was minimal. Andrea Harwood, leader of the opposition in the Ontario Legislative Assembly, has accused the government of failing to address school safety. He said class sizes have not been reduced and more buses have not been arranged. According to Harwood, teachers also expect the premiers to treat them with respect.
I think that parents are going to be worried about where the premier's priorities lie when he's made no effort to get the kids back to school, knowing that it's not just their academic progress that's at stake here. It's their mental health, it's their socialization, it's their developmental stages that are all being impacted. We know that all along, schools could have been made safer by this government. But Doug Ford didn't want to spend the money on our kids. He didn't want to make the classroom sizes smaller. He didn't want to invest in proper ventilation and other changes to provide for more touchless movements in the schools. He didn't want to reduce the number of kids on buses. All of these things could have been done to make our schools safer and keep our kids in classrooms. he just hasn't wanted to do it, and that's really shortchanging our children, and it's creating a lot of stress on our families. I would suspect that teachers would hope that the Premier starts treating them with some respect. The idea that this Premier has that the best way to get out of a question is to point fingers at teachers or teachers' unions is really getting old. I don't think anybody believes it. Certainly, he's making stuff up again, and again that creates a disservice for our kids. It's not good enough to make these things up and walk away from your obligation to get our kids back into schools and to spend the money necessary to do that safely. Well, it's never too late to do the right thing, in my opinion, Sean. And I think most people would say it's never too late to do the right thing. There's no doubt that a lot of time has been wasted, and it's the kids that suffered. It's children that paid the price of Doug Ford's unwillingness to invest in their education. And in fact, we've seen the government already start cutting going forward the education funding, and that's something I think that parents don't want to see, and that kids deserve better than that. I would urge the Premier to take a hard look at what can be done to make those schools safer and give the kids a bit of a normalcy, if you will, before this summer. It's the least that we can do for our kids, and the least we can do to give our parents a bit of a break as well. I certainly know that there are concerns about vaccinations of teachers and other education workers. That needs to be achieved also. But all of these things could have been prioritized by the Premier. He just wasn't interested in doing that for kids or families.
So that's all we have in this bulletin. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more updated news.